Health and Education Work Group from the Writing Consortium. This is our monthly meeting. We're going to be running from 5 to roughly 6:30. Jason, if you could advance the slide, just to kind of touch base a little bit. These are some of our meeting norms that we've maintained since we've started. Mute yourself when not talking. Please use the chat if you have questions. And you can also unmute yourself and raise your hand in the window spot if somebody sees you waving your hand and we don't see you. The chat feature is always really helpful. When you do speak, please identify yourself. This is being recorded and will be posted on the consortium's website. Members of the public, if and when you wish to speak, we do have a public comment at the end of the meeting that'll be available for you to either just make a note in the chat, and Jason, our DSU liaison, will make sure that we recognize you at that time. And there is, we have about 10 minutes scheduled for tonight if there's a need for public comment. Also, just before we kick off and get into the real meat of the meeting, just want to make a plug that we are going to have to talk about the next meeting after the discussion tonight, when we're going to meet again. We run into Thanksgiving, which is our traditional, the Thanksgiving holiday, which is our typical meeting week and date. So we're going to have to make sure we talk about that. We'll have a few options for you when we get near the end. And a lot of it really depends on how the conversation goes this evening, I believe, in our smaller work groups. Next slide, Jason. So we're going to do the roll call vote. Voting members, please just put your name in the chat as here, and then also indicate which small work group you belong to. Jason has been, Jason will be tracking your responses and tagging you for breakout sessions later on in the afternoon here. Also, for the public, if you're joining us and you would like to join a work group, there are 3 work groups. It's wraparound support services, early childhood, and racial and social justice. Those are the 3 groups. You're welcome to join any one of the smaller group conversations. Just indicate in the chat which one. If you missed all that and we're moving too quick, when we go to the breakouts, I'm going to remain back with Jason, and anybody who doesn't get assigned to a breakout room will facilitate getting you into a breakout room relatively quickly. So don't panic if you don't put anything in right now next to your name, because you're not sure what you want to do. And if you're new to us, especially, we can kind of spend some time talking through what each group is doing. Next slide. We do need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Jason had originally posted them early on in the chat. If we could, a voting member could please, or all voting members, pull those up if you haven't already reviewed them, and we need a motion for approval. Thank you, Terry. I see a motion in the chat. Can I have a second? Thank you, Tamara. Okay, let's move on, Jason. Thank you very much. So we're gonna just do a quick set of updates here, and I'm gonna ask Matt Den to give us an update a little bit on the settlement that has been heavily discussed at the consortium, the fuller body meeting, and as well as last night. Just kind of give us a high level overview of where we are with that, Matt, from a larger perspective.
Sure. We've had a couple of opportunities. One at the last consortium meeting last week, and then another one at a special meeting we had last night to go over the settlement agreement that the plaintiffs reached with the state in the education funding case. And others who are at this meeting were at some of those meetings, and anyone can jump in and correct me if my Reader's Digest version is off. But I think the bottom line is that everyone's pleased about the settlement, that it's going to result in a net increase in the amount of money that's going directly to schools and school districts, that's designed to benefit kids who are living below the poverty line, and kids who are English language learners. But that it really should not deter us from forging ahead with the discussions that we've been having about additional efforts that ought to be made. For one reason, much of the money is to be allocated in future years, and there are kids right now who are urgently in need of help in some of the areas that we have been talking about. And there's also some uncertainty about exactly what the money is going to be used for, just because of the way that the settlement is structured. And each of our working groups has had some very specific discussions about some very specific things that need to be done for these children. And if we want to ensure that they get done, we need to move ahead as we have been, and make some specific recommendations about things that should happen. So I think that's the short version is a great development in general, but not something that ought to slow down anything that we're doing.
Thanks, Matt. Actually, I think that it fits nicely with like our one of our original goals. If we recall, we set this backward mapping concept where what did we want to do? And you actually gave us a target date of December, knowing that the legislator and the governor begin thinking about the budget for the future during that time. And our goal was to provide the full body consortium with a set of priorities as it relates to social determinants of health and for students. And we've continued to maintain that charge. We really started from a pretty simple screen. If you all recall, there was a bunch of arrows pointing in all different directions, all doing great work in providing energy towards a solution. And we kind of agreed that all the arrows needed to be facing in the same direction and working together towards improvement. And the work of this larger group and then our subgroups has really been about taking a look at those arrows, specifically with respect to the themes that were identified: racial and social justice, early childhood, and wraparound support services partnerships. And the groups have been spending a lot of time looking at those topics and concepts, resources that are existing in the community, needs assessments of those resources in the community to try to come forward with those recommendations. So in December, we're presenting what we believe are the priorities. And that's just that's what we've been doing since July. And we've only been in existence for a short period of time, but thanks to the work of our small work group chairs and leads, we put together a lot of comprehensive information and resources to support the work that the consortium is seeking. That said, I'm going to ask Ray if she can kind of fill us in now on where we're headed with the work groups today, and where we are and where we're headed.
Thank you, Jeff. Where we are is we have a lot of work to do in a short period of time. But we also are in a really fast-paced, very demanding environment with a lot of activity in the education space going on. And so we want to be aware of, we want to call out intersections with our work as they exist, but we want to stay the course so that we are drilling down on shaping our recommendations by December. So with that in mind, this is going to be a working meeting as opposed to a report out sessions. We thought that you all could utilize the time, that we all can utilize the time. And so each of our small group leaders has a set of discussion prompts. And you all have you have yours, you have them, Dawn, Tamara?
To us, I'm looking, I know Jason sent them to us yesterday, right, Jason?
Right, so you're gonna need to pull them up. Jason, I don't, do you have a slide with the discussion prompts on it?
I
Okay,
can
so
pull it from the
we'll
email.
need you to pull them up, Tamara and Yasser and Roger. I'll hit the high notes really quickly. So here's some discussion prompts you can add to, but take a look at what the work that you put forth thus far, your ideas in your respective areas, and ask yourself, is the latest version of your recommendation still the right ones in the current ecosystem? Consider if there are any intersections or any of the aspects of the recommendations that are impacted in any way by the settlement, which is all speculative still at this time. So ask the question, but don't get hung up on it, okay? That particular one about the settlement. From your list of recommendations, what are the two that should be priorities for the upcoming legislative session? So that's where it gets more difficult, is to start to drill down on the priorities. For just, not that we won't have multi-year priorities, but what are going to be the top priorities for this upcoming legislative session? For those priority recommendations that your group discusses be raised up, which children should be the initial focus? And some examples are there particular feeder patterns for particular schools, or a particular set of students that are living in identified census tracts? Or there other profiles or characteristics of those students that you want to call out that should be prioritized? It's never enough funding to do everybody at the same time. I mean, to do interventions for everyone at the same time. Aside from funding, what else needs to be done in order to implement these two recommendations? Some examples are, do we need to dig deeper around active engagement of stakeholders? Do we need to do more public information and more public awareness around the recommendations? Is the recommendation related to administrative state agency action or legislative action? Is it a school board action item? So we want you to have some discussion around that. And that's it. You can add too, but I just want to make sure that everybody has all the group leaders have those discussion prompts, and if not, put in the chat and Jason will resend to you. Jason, you're a hardworking guy, aren't you?
Yeah. All right.
So
So that said, Ray, I think we're ready to go to our breakout rooms, and I'll stick back with Jason and get any stragglers that come into the main that are still in here, and then also work on a calendar options for the next the next meeting.
And remind us how long we're going to be in our small groups.
50 minutes, and we're going to give you like a 5-minute warning.
You said 50, 50?
50,
Five
yes.
zero,
Great, thank you.
yes. Right, is that good?
It's great for all for our group. I'm not sure. I can't speak for everybody.
We'll give you a 5-minute warning, and give us be prepared to give us a really concise report out.
Before we do, I see Matt's hand. Is that on purpose?
Yeah, I was gonna.
No,
Okay.
sorry about that.
Anything that you want to write down in your breakout sessions, please do it in a separate document. The recording will not capture the chat that happens in breakout rooms. So if you do want to take notes, the chat is not going to keep them.
Thank you for that technicality.
Yep.
Yeah, I've run into that a few times.
Okay.
Thanks, Jason. Anything else, Ray or Matt, before we shoot out?
Sorry, I already did it.
Good. All right, so here's who's left.
Yeah, they're on their way. Tika, you're with us. What room do you want to be in?
What room is, I'm with Dawn, wherever.
That's
Dawn.
early childhood.
Okay, gotcha.
Have fun. Do we all make it back, Jason? I don't think so. There's still only 4 people here. It's just me, you, and Ray.
Yeah, they
And
seem
Matt.
resistant. They're hanging in there. That means they're engaged.
Oh, they're hanging right down to the bitter end of
Yeah.
the breakout.
Yep.
Here we go.
All right, everyone should be back now.
All right. Dawn, you want, or Ray, do you want to tee up the report out? I think we have a slide for Jason. You want to advance the slide? All right. We're gonna. Did you have any parameters, Ray? You were thinking about the small group report out, or just gonna let?
Well,
We know we have
to
10
get-
minutes.
We have to, it's 10 minutes total running time.
All right. So racial justice, Yasser and Roger, you guys are up. You're on the clock.
But there are 3, they could get 3 minutes each for a total of 10 minutes running time.
All right.
I'll take 2 minutes.
Oh,
Who
sold.
said they were going to take 2 minutes?
Me.
sold. Did Yasser say he was going to do it in 2 minutes?
Roger, that's right. You know,
Roger?
I,
Oh.
Roger,
I
All
don't,
right.
you know Yasser
Right.
couldn't.
I was going to say I'm not taking that bet.
that's too hard, right?
Is everybody back?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can sit with Yasser all day, by the way. So there's
He
that.
is- You
Now-
both are fascinating.
Yep. All right, Roger,
Now,
you got
here's where we are. I can do this in 2 minutes.
got it.
I think what we realized in our conversation is that we say racial justice and it's an easy word to say, but it's a really, really difficult thing to achieve. So we know that we cannot achieve racial justice without having data or without having policies in law that allow for transparency in data to expose the harm. Because some people are benefiting in our system and some people are not benefiting, they're being harmed. And so the primary thing for us is, can we have policies that create data, public dashboards, transparent data around hiring, promotion, student outcomes, discipline, etc. Let's have that, let's collect the data so we know who's impacted, who is moving up and who's moving down. We had a conversation about the long history of Brown versus Board and the intent and why all of this is in place, but we really love if there were a mechanism, the way that we've identified high poverty schools, to also identify resegregated schools. So to identify schools that over time, rather than being integrated, are actually am I here? Oh, have actually been resegregated, because if we can identify those schools in law, then everything else that follows from our one pager in terms of equipping them with teachers that represent that community of students in that school, in terms of making sure that the mental health supports required for healing are there, and making sure that from a culture and curriculum perspective, everyone is prepared, taught, to make sure that those children could learn in the way that they need to learn, to remove the inequities. So that's where we are. Data, identifying schools that are resegregated, and then these schools could be the targeted of all the primary targets when you ask who do we start with first.
Great.
Right.
Okay.
So let me just quickly add to that. I'll do this in 1 minute, just one point. In addition to, so we want control of the curriculum. We want a mostly Black teaching force, right, who controls the curriculum. We do know that race matters. When Black teachers are in the room, scores go up. There's a ton of experimental designs, right, that demonstrate that. We know also, right, we need to control the curriculum, right, because then other than that, you're going to end up having Black bodies, Black teachers producing the same outcomes that white teachers do, because they're all trained the same way in college, right? So therefore they walk in with their assumptions, kind of like Black police officers kill Black boys, right? Because they're all trained in the same way. So they need to control the curriculum. Also, in terms of the data, right? We want certain kinds of data. We need intersectional data by race, ethnicity, gender, right? Neighborhood, in school by grade level, right? We also need disciplinary and expulsion data, or disciplinary data, expulsion, in-school suspension data, right? But we also need to add a new column, right? We need to know the charge, what happened, because we can say they got expelled, but what happened, right? And that's oftentimes, as it is in the case with crime, right? These charges are just petty. And a lot of times the students and their parents don't know exactly their educational rights. So we need student advocates that are automatically going to get on the side of the student, just like the institution does for the teacher. The teacher oftentimes frames what is going on, and the students don't have the ability to articulate it. And oftentimes parents are just caught in the middle. So we need full transparency about what's going on, right? In terms of the curriculum, but also in terms of the data around disciplinary kinds of outcomes inside those schools.
And I have a lot of this detail. I was doing like top level, so I have a lot of this written down.
Great. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Yasser. All right, next up, wraparound and partnerships.
Hey, everybody. So I just took some notes down on my Post-its here, kind of synthesizing everything. So team, please let me know if I've left anything out high level. Just overall, in our current plan, our two priority areas are going to be the outside school time and wellness centers. Those are going to be the two pieces of the wraparound service component that we're going to elevate. What I heard and what we discussed as a committee, some key pieces that we feel have to be a part of this proposal in order for it to be successful. One, clearly heard the importance of funding, also known as being really sustainable. So how do we actually ensure that the funding becomes like part of the school formula, so that funding for this type of programming that needs to be robust, that needs to be heavy, is not at the whim of whoever is in charge of the administration at that time? How do we make it become perfect in that it stays forever? In the community piece, we talked a lot about the importance of these programs being in the schools, being actually authentically part of the community, not just a name where, you know, an outside center or program is coming in, they show up just after school and utilizing the building and then leave at the end of the day. No, they are actually part of the staff. They get to know the staff and students, and they also get to know community members and parents as well. Full day from beginning to end, and having that program and be a part of it. And also just in addition to the outside school with academic supports, we talked a lot about the importance of the holistic development. So that includes authentic play, allowing students, whether it's K to 12, and also including early childhood, to have opportunities at their high school level to explore you know, books for play, or, you know, interests that don't have a grade tied to it, and allow them to have that, as well as younger students to also have that opportunity to explore and have those things, so that they are not just having the, you know, full rigor of academic, which matters, but also just the authentic experience of growing and learning and developing as a child. Also, the staff needs to reflect the community. We feel very strongly about that. And also, as always, as part of the funding piece, in order to have a strong program, you need to have really strong talent, and that means you have to pay them. I shared that where I've seen these programs work successfully, it's not just about the training, you have to retain the talent as well, as part of the success. And then lastly, I'll probably just add in, we also talked about bringing back like joint agreements with school buildings. I mean, again, the importance of having programs in school buildings after school. Is there a way that we can ensure that, again, it's fully and authentically part of the community, and not having an outside group just show up and then leave, that they are there all day, that we are utilizing school buildings that are empty once the bell rings. Obviously, this is post-COVID, and how can we utilize them in the best way?
Great.
I think I kept that under 2 minutes, I hope, or 3 minutes.
3 minutes. You were close. Yeah, it was close. That was a Professor Payne 3 minutes. You were good. You were good. All right. Next group. Dawn, you're up. Early childhood.
Woo! All right.
I had it ready to go. Okay, here we go. So I am going to, I'm going to share my screen really fast.
Uh-oh.
Yep, here we go. That's right. Okay, so we talked quite a bit about, we talked about special education funding. We talked about developmental screening. We landed on our two top priorities being looking at home visiting. So there are 4 home visiting programs that within the state of Delaware all meet the criteria for quality, the national criteria for efficacy. However, what we lack in Delaware is a system for referral. We lack a system for coordinating home visiting. And so people like me, people who work with families every day, there is not a system in place for people to refer families for home visiting. There's not a system for Medicaid providers. There's not a system for WIC or Part C or Part B or childcare providers and on to refer families to services. So we need a unified system, and each of these programs are different. So some programs are for children birth to 2, some are for children birth to 5, some are for first-time mothers. So the eligibility for the programs differs. So obviously a mom might be eligible for one and not the other. So it's not a one size fits all. So we need a unified system looking at the 4 programs within Delaware. We need to be able to create the system for referral, and then also data and documentation, because, and we talked about that quite a bit in all of these systems, that without the ability to determine who's enrolled, how long do they stay in the program, we are unable to say this program was effective, this program was not effective, this is how it impacted this family, because we don't have longitudinal data. We're not keeping that information. And so one of the recommendations that Matt had made previously was creating that system within Medicaid. So new mother, family applies for WIC, family applies for purchase of care, family is working with social services, we are making that referral to home visiting. So that's home visiting. The second one is aligning and funding birth to 5 early intervention special education, and particularly focusing on the 4 schools that serve children that live within the city of Wilmington. And we talked about how what services look like within those 4 districts is very, very different. And the system, we have an antiquated system that is racist. We have a system that excludes certain children simply because the system is what it's always been. And so we exclude children who are unable, we keep children from being able to attend programming. I want to show you this chart, because if a program is not licensed by the Office of Child Care Licensing, it cannot accept purchase of care. And if a program is not participating in Delaware Stars, it cannot participate in ECAP. So if you're not licensed, you cannot accept purchase of care, which is child care subsidy. If you're not in Delaware Stars, you can't accept ECAP, which is the free preschool program funded through the Department of Education. So here are 4 districts: Brandywine, Christina, Colonial, Red Clay. 1 is licensed by the Office of Child Care Licensing. 1 is in purchase of care. 3 are in Stars, but the one within the city, I'm on my front porch, and of course my neighbor's car alarm is going off, sorry. When we look at Delaware Stars, 2 of our programs that serve city children are in Stars, 2 are not. So these programs can't accept purchase of care. These programs cannot participate in ECAP. And then when we look at before and after care, families need before and after care in order to be able to work a full work day. So some programs are only half day, some are a full day, some charge tuition. So the only way that families can access program might be paying tuition, and we know that's a hardship for families. So we talked about, it's about education. First, we need to educate our school district leaders to understand why they need to become licensed and why they need to join Delaware Stars, and teach them about purchase of care, teach them about ECAP, because we really do think it's, people often don't know what they don't know, but the outcome is children are being excluded from these programs within the city, that children who live within the city of Wilmington cannot access these programs.
Great. Thanks, Dawn.
There we go.
Great. That was another Yasser. 3 minutes. We're good. All right, Ray.
I need a timer.
You need a timer, right? We need
Yeah.
yeah, you need a timer. All right. So that's really, you know, it's been exciting to watch the work groups function and gather and work outside of these meetings. And I'm grateful that we had the opportunity tonight to bring everybody together to kind of really kind of to bring the image together of what the recommendations or the priorities are going to be from this group. So before we wrap up, I do want to open up to public comment. Open up the floor. Oh, wait. Ray, did you have the next steps for the work groups? I see Ray, you may have stepped away. So maybe we'll jump to the public comment and then we'll kind of close out with where we're headed next. Did you get
Well,
any? Jason,
no,
did you get any public comment?
let's go to public comment.
Yep.
All right. Nobody signed up for public comment in the chat, but we can hang out for a minute if anyone wants to step forward and speak.
This is Erin Goldner. Quickly, recreational activities. I know it was mentioned in one of the groups that was given their presentation to have activities that are authentic and organically happen. We need recreation activities, especially now since COVID, and it is more difficult to create these programs when you have space issues and you have social space issues. Activities like running, you can space out and still run. We need safe paths to be able to run in the city so that kids can practice for a 5K in the small area that they live. We're losing competitive opportunities. Not that I give a crap about competitive opportunities, but that's what also makes areas valuable when you're able to participate in competitive events. And then that's when, you know, colleges make you offers, and even high schools make people offers when they're really good. But we have to think of recreational activities that children can still participate in and stay out of trouble. That's all part of education. If you're physically active, you're mentally a little, I think, a lot better and able to learn and stay seated to listen and learn. That's why kids are just like, forget this, all this. I can't sit still this long. But if we have more recreational activities going on, they may be able to sit still longer and, you know, achieve at least 2 hours of learning a day. We got to have recreational activities in the city, and it happens to be some of the populations are all African American. So we could focus that in those areas and really contemplate how that looks. There's Howard High School has a half field with no track. We have some baseball fields that aren't being utilized, but where do my female girls, when you talk about equity, what do my female girls have going on recreational wise? Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Any other public comment? Okay. So our next meeting of the larger group, before we kind of wrap up here, is we are going to kind of split. We have Thanksgiving would be the normal time we meet, which would be this Thursday in November. Obviously, we won't be doing that. We would like to meet on the 30th of November from 5 to 6:30 as the larger group, to kind of bring forward the latest version, almost polished version of the priorities from the subgroups. Like however the document, the memos get revised, the priorities get elevated to the top, and a little bit more fleshed out of what the ask is going to look like for those priorities. Then we will also be having another meeting, but it will be for the smaller group leads. We'd like to meet for about an hour on Wednesday the 2nd from 4 to 5 to put together the final presentation that we're going to make to the full body consortium on the 10th of December, kind of what that's going to look like, and how we want to do that presentation. The last one we were given, Jason and I were talking, they kind of basically said, give us a slide deck. You have 15 minutes. What do you have that time? So we would, again, just kind of be waiting to see what that looks like when the full body consortium develops their agenda for that meeting. Again, our goal is to have the work that's been going on with the two priorities from each of the subgroups presented, and how we do that, we can decide on the second. Ray, did you have anything else to add from the next, what's going on from now until the 30th? I know that the work groups are going to continue to work, going to continue to get feedback from Ray. Matt, I know, has been instrumental in kind of keeping us consistent with our templates. Ray, did you have any other comments on the next, what the work group, the smaller group should be doing as we move forward?
I would defer to Matt. He has a much bigger picture as the co-chair of the Full Reading Consortium. But before I punt to Matt, thank you so very much for the thoughtfulness and the enthusiasm that you poured into tonight's meeting.
I agree 100% with Ray. I appreciate this meeting, your efforts, but also all the time and energy you're putting in outside of these meetings. It's impressive. I know you all have work that you're doing on the outside, and that you've made time for this is commendable, and thank you. And Matt, we'll let you kind of close us out with what should be the things they should be thinking about as they move to the next level with these smaller groups, and then you can close us out.
Sure. No, I think what we need to have at our next meeting from each of the three groups, ideally, is a document that sort of makes the case for what they've just described to us, explains, what it is, what these two things are that we want to have done, why they're important, and what it'll cost. Because ultimately, what we are seeking to do is to put something together that the consortium can sign off on, and we can put in front of the governor, put in front of the legislators who are involved in putting together the state's budget, and say, you need to do this, and this is why. We likely will not have an opportunity to actually have an audience with them. So, we need to have something in writing, and they have lots of different competing demands on the funds that are available. So, we need to make the best case that we can for the things that we think are important, and it has to be in a form that we can deliver to them, and they can sit down and look at it and understand why it's important and what it would involve. So that's the kind of document that hopefully we would be able to be looking at our next meeting, to be able to talk about and revise if necessary, and sign off on.
Great. All right. Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it. Thank you again for your time this evening. Appreciate all your hard work. I think that's a wrap, unless anybody has something else for the good of the cause.
Did we agree on the next date, or we didn't?
November 30th,
November 30th.
5 to 6:30.
Okay.
And then put down the second from 4 to 5 for you, Dawn, for the leads. We're going to have another meeting to kind of finalize our presentation.
Okay. And then say that again?
November 30th, 5 to 6:30 is our next full group meeting.
And the other date?
The 2nd of December.
Okay.
4 to 5.
Thank
and
you
that's just
so
the
much.
work group leads.
So
Thank
just
you.
one quick question. When do we get the document? When is is the document in terms of how to, I guess, cost out and develop our plan a little bit more fully, that's due on the 30th? Or do we want that in before the 30th? For the 30th?
I think ideally for the 30th, Roger, would be best. I mean, if you have any questions or comments or concerns as you're going along, like how to do that, I think Matt, Ray, and myself can kind of help put dollars on it. I think you guys know what your vision is. Now it's like by the 30th, I think we want to try to have something so that by the 10th, when we present to the full body, there's a dollar amount that kind of is affixed to the work.
Cool. Perfect. Solid.
Okay.
So some of these recommendations they're not things that we can recommend for just 4 districts. So some of these things, if we're making it a requirement, it has to be the whole state. I'm just saying.
that's where it's going to get challenging, Dawn. Yes, you're correct. But we have to, that's why you've spent this time refining your purpose and honing the ask, why it's important, and you have to make that case. And I think it is, some of them are big. I mean,
Yeah.
I heard the wraparound services one, those were too big.
Woo-hoo.
They may seem like, after school time, like that's just this much time. No, it's not the way it was described. So I think we're talking, the asks are going to, the dollar amount asked is going to be reflective of the scope of the work. So I think don't let that slow you down. It'd be my recommendation.
If there's any way, understanding that what you just said, Dawn, about being statewide, if there's a way in the cost parameters
Nope.
that dollars can be pulled out for Newcastle County, I think that would be good. I think it's advantageous as appropriate to be statewide. This
Oh, I
has to go
agree.
yeah,
I mean,
but we need to be able to
Yeah.
carve out too, if you
Yeah.
can, budgetarily.
all right.
Okay.
All right, all.
Good news
Thanks.
numbers. All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you,
Night.
everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Don't forget to vote.
Absolutely.
Forget to vote.